Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, B. McDonald joins us to discuss masking, cannabis research for autistic people, and overwhelm when going out into the community. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. B, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast, so I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited too. And I'd love to start out our conversation by learning, where does your story in the autistic community begin?
Yes. So my story begins, I would say, probably around like middle school, high school. I think that's when I first started to not necessarily feel like I was different, but notice that like my peers were into different things that I was into. And the friendships that I had were pretty strange. I never really had close friends like in high school. And then 2015, when I went to college, was when I really struggled and like was really having a hard time making friends. And that's when I really started to like do the reflection and be like, okay, what is like actually going on here? So since 2015, I went through so many things. I thought I was bipolar. I thought I was a star seed from a different planet. I thought I was highly sensitive. And then 2020 was when I first started to consider that I was autistic. And I think that's probably something a lot of people can relate to because I started to see it more on TikTok. And then I was like, yeah, I'm kind of relating to things a lot more than I think I would if I wasn't autistic. And 2022 was when I really started to like actually self-identify after learning a lot. So it was a lot of self-researching, and that was when I first started to make like autism and ADHD content on TikTok. And then last year, April, was when I got my formal diagnosis. And now here we are.
And I learned about you on social media. You have great content. And one of your videos that I saw that I thought was really cool, in which you talked about what you wish you knew before learning you were autistic. So, what things have you learned about yourself since then about your autism? And are there any things you still hope to learn?
Yeah, of course. I feel like I have learned a lot of things in even the last year. But I think that one of the biggest things that I've learned is just like how deep my mask goes and how that's basically just how I functioned my whole life and didn't really realize it. And then, like, aside from that, I've learned that a lot of the coping skills along with masking, a lot of the coping skills that I've used to make it just really aren't enough anymore. You know, it made sense as like a teenager to behave a certain way, and then I became an adult, and now I'm like, okay, well, now why am I having such a hard time? And I'm learning that that's why. And as far as like learning anything new, I think that the biggest things that I am looking to learn are like what my needs are, because I feel like, as a late diagnosed autistic, my needs just kind of haven't been met for a lot of my life because I've just sort of masked it away. And so now at this point, I'm like, I know they're there. I don't know what they are, but I'd love to figure those out so that I can, maybe work my way out of burnout. And, just learning how to unmask in ways that makes me still comfortable and able to communicate while not feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to act like a certain way, and figuring out what's right and what's wrong. So,
I definitely identify with what you were saying because when I learned I was autistic a few years ago, my one of my thoughts was like, where does my mask and I begin? So
Yeah.
it's just definitely been an interesting process.
Yeah, it really is. It's crazy how deep it goes too. When you think you're like, oh, I've got it. It's like, no, you don't.
Or over the years when thought like I'm out of burnout and then I quickly go back in and
Mhm.
it's just never ending it seems.
It is. No, every once in a while, I think that I've made it out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not disabled anymore. I feel fine today, so everything else must be irrelevant.
Another video that you created that I was really interested about was about current research on cannabis for autistic people. It sounds like you kind of were really digging in and trying to find that research. And I'm wondering about that research and how marijuana helps to regulate you. So it doesn't seem like there is enough research out there. Although I know many
Mhm.
autistic people that have told me how it's been helpful to them, and I think I've had some mixed results with it in different forms.
Mhm.
How would you like to see research improved in terms of the effects of cannabis for autistics?
Yeah, I think overall, I would love for there to be, in general, just more research. From what I found, it kind of seems like science is leaning towards it is helpful. And, we know it's helpful for a lot of other things. So it does make sense that it could be beneficial. But it seems like there just isn't enough, like, actual trials with placebos for them to be like, oh, yeah, like that's definitely what helped. So I would love to see more of that so that we can actually progress towards science saying, yes, like this is actually something that's beneficial. Because I think that it's something that a lot of people might be hesitant to use just because of the lack of research or whatever like stigma there is around it. But I feel like having that concrete, like, these are the trials we did and this is the research we found, I feel like that would just, it would help so many people.
So I don't know if I'm just ignorant to the research in this area, but it seems to me like a lot of the research is about how this is how cannabis helps autistic kids. Is did you find
Mhm.
much out there about research for autistic adults?
No. And that's like my biggest beef in general, because whenever you look up any type of resource, you get children and
Yeah.
families. And it's like, that's helpful for the children and families. And I'm glad that's there. But then we grow up into adults. So there's definitely a lack of research. Whenever I did look it up, most of what I find is for children, and it's proven to help them. So, it's a start. But obviously, children are consuming it in a much different way than adults are. So,
I have a caregiver card on behalf of someone that has a medical marijuana card. So
mhm.
thankfully, she understands these things, but finding a strain that might be right for you seems like it would be a pretty overwhelming experience. So beyond just trial by error, because marijuana is expensive, do you have suggestions for people picking out a strain that will hopefully work for their needs?
Yeah, because I agree, it is very expensive. And I am the type of person that I learned after I stopped smoking street weed that the strain is very important. And, these days I would be devastated to spend 60 dollars on something that, just makes me anxious. But I typically will spend a very long time. There's many times where my fiance will come back and be like, "You're still looking?" Because like I'll go onto the dispensary website and I'll just click through, and I like to read through like the little description that they give, and then sometimes they include like the different terpenes, and then those are different things that when you pay attention to them, they can, help with like mood boosting or like anxiety. They all have different kind of purposes. So I like to look at those and pick the ones that have the highest terpenes that I personally feel like would be helpful to me. And if you just like Google what terpenes are, there are so much resources on them, even TikTok, if you're not the type of person that likes to read like me. But the first place that I usually go when I'm looking for like people's reviews is Leafly. So that's a really good website that has a lot of information just in general on cannabis, but they also have like local dispensaries and they have just like all of the strains that you could possibly think of. I will just go back and forth between the dispensary page and Leafly and kind of just click on whatever seems interesting to me and put it on Leafly and see. Usually they have like a more in-depth description, and sometimes they'll include what people typically use it for, especially like medical patients. So they'll say medical patients usually use this for chronic pain or insomnia or anxiety. And those are usually the ones that I go to because if they use it, then that means it's got to work for me. And then I also like to read the reviews because people leave very detailed reviews and also will include like if it made them paranoid or if it made them anxious, then I know to stay away from that because it's probably going to do that to me. And people get really detailed. The My favorite strain ever I found is because somebody left a review and specifically said that it helped them with their symptoms of autism, and I was like, I'm going to try it, and it really helps. Yeah, so between Leafly, sometimes strains have different names, which is confusing.
Right.
So I'll look it up and Leafly is like, I don't know what that is. So I'll usually Google it. And usually there is also like a subreddit, either like specifically for cannabis or specifically for medical patients. And usually they have whatever I can't find on Leafly. And those are really good reviews too because they're from medical patients and I trust them more than I trust any other users. So that's typically how I go about picking. It's a long process, but it is worth it because it is expensive. But I found all my great strains just like that.
Something, I mean, we're talking about how maybe marijuana can regulate us in some ways. Another way that I feel regulated is when I feel that I'm organized, whether I'm organized or not. If I feel like I'm organized, then
Yeah.
that's definitely helpful. And in thinking about that, in one of your videos, you briefly mentioned creating a Discord server to organize your life. So I'm familiar with Discord a little bit, but how do you use Discord to organize your life?
Yeah. So I basically just have because I'm like typically somebody who likes to like throw everything in my notes app, which just gets really disorganized because then it's a bunch of notes and I gotta click through all of them. So instead of like, trying to figure out how to put them in folders, I just make different text channels on Discord. And I went because I've seen some people be concerned about like people raiding the server or anything. I made it so that if anybody did happen to join, they can't like see anything. You have to have like a specific role. That way all of my stuff is kind of protected. But I have 21 and counting because they like to add different text channels, and I just kind of categorize whatever I've got going on into those. So I have one for like doctor's visits. So I'll like track different symptoms I'm having and like dates so that when I go to the doctor, I don't forget. I put important things like links. If I get like a link on my phone and I actually need to access it on my computer, so much easier to just throw it in there and then like hop on Discord and there it is. And I keep track of things like my recipes, grocery lists, meal planning. That way I kind of always have it on me. And then I have random ones for like my brain dumps and like memes if I don't want them on my phone, but like I want to keep them because like they're pretty and I don't want to lose them. What if I want it one day? But yeah, it's been really helpful to me. It's been a couple of months now and it's stood the test of the ADHD. So that's a big test. So yeah.
You talking about the notes app, that's exactly my experience where I will make so many different notes because I'll have a million different thoughts and don't want to lose those thoughts.
Hmm.
If it wasn't
Yeah.
for the search bar, I would never find those things ever again. So,
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I felt. So I'm like, well, we'll just put it all in one app. And then it's a little bit easier to click through instead of like a bunch of different notes. I can just kind of scroll through all of my different messages of thoughts.
whoever is the creator of the search function in apps and on the internet, they have saved my life.
Oh, for real. So many things I would never find ever again.
On your social media, you've created several different videos in which you go out into the community and film your experience, which was really fun for me to watch because I've thought about doing that. And then I thought, oh no, I'm already overwhelmed going out. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. So, what are some things you do to maybe help regulate yourself when you go out, whether it's going to the grocery store, going to a restaurant, or just doing evil things that we call errands?
Yeah, that's the worst. I, number one, would say that I use cannabis to, kind of give myself a baseline level of functioning ability. And then beyond that, it's me and my ear protection against the world. I will always wear my headphones in the store. Sometimes I put music on because sometimes that can kind of help me to be in myself as opposed to out everywhere else. I also am very specific about when I go and where I go. So I have like my stores that I'm comfortable going to and times that I'm comfortable going. I typically don't run errands after like 12. If I haven't left the house by 12 p.m., it's not happening because now I'm like everybody's outside and it's too much. And then I like to bring my fidgets and I give myself like little rewards for doing things. So I'll always get a little treat. That's what gets me out because I'm like, okay, well, we'll get a little treat after. And then I feel like for me, like my outfit and like the way that I look is really important to like how like safe I feel in the world. It's almost like a physical mask to be like, okay, well, if people are looking at me, I know like how they're perceiving me. Like I am kind of still in control of it because of like how intentional I am with the way that I dress. And days when like I don't do that, I feel incredibly unsafe out in the world. So I would say that that's probably one of my main things that I make sure to always do if I want to have a good time outside. Typically if I'm vlogging.
So, your clothing isn't just based on like sensory needs.
No, it's gotten a little bit more complicated the more burnout I have experienced. But typically, because a lot of the clothes that I have are clothes that I just find comfortable, anyways. Like, I like a lot of skirts, I like dresses. So typically, when I'm going out into the world, it's like whatever the vibe that my brain is feeling is what drives what I wear. And honestly, most of the time, it doesn't matter if it is physically uncomfortable. If my brain has decided I want to wear it, I got to figure it out, or I'm not going, or I'm going to have a bad time.
And lastly, B, how can our listeners learn about you beyond this interview?
Yeah, so I am honestly most active on TikTok right now. I do hope to be more active on YouTube in the up and coming future, but TikTok's where I'm the most active, and that is O is a B, and that's where you can find more of me.
Well, I will keep finding more of you on TikTok, and it was wonderful to get a chance to talk with you today, B. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Thanks so much to B for the conversation. To learn more about B, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self directed, purpose driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. Our distinct approach prioritizes each client's unique goals and preferences, fostering a sense of agency and promoting self advocacy. Coaches work collaboratively with clients to develop personalized strategies and tools that can help with executive functioning, emotional regulation, relationship building, stress management, and more. We also support parents and partners of autistic people by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. With our accessible remote services, individuals from any location can receive the assistance and mentoring they need. Join us today to experience judgment free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.